Hey guys, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings NBA picks for Wednesday, 10/29. For starters, we'll look at some of the guys that are on the top end of the spectrum today. You got three guys that are in play that you can really pay up for. There's actually more than that, but there's three guys who I'm really looking at to consider. The first is James Harden as a shooting guard. Plays against Denver, high pace game. He's one of the top options on the day, somebody who gets a lot of volume. I'm actually interested to see how things work out. He's somebody who dominated the ball a lot last year, but last year they really didn't have a point guard. This year they brought in Ty Lawson, and Lawson is somebody who's used to playing with the ball in his hand as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how these two coexist. Harden is somebody who always makes sure he gets his shots off, has the ball in his hand a lot, is driving to the basket, draws a lot of fouls, puts up a lot of points that way. So I definitely think he's somebody that I'm going to be looking at today. I am interested, though, to see how things work out with, him finally having a point guard, to see if the ball's in Lawson's hands a little more and if Lawson looks to, kind of penetrate and set up his teammates, including Harden a little more than, Harden was trying to do a lot last year, where he was the guy with the ball in his hands, trying to get to the basket, making things happen on offense. So it'll be interesting to see how that works, but I still think that Harden is going to definitely get his shots up. I still think he's definitely going to get his. And in a high-paced game like this, I definitely think he's one of the guys to consider. The two other guys that I'm going to be looking at are DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis. Now, a lot of people are a little upset because Davis had a horrible game yesterday. I think at one point he was like 1 for 15 from the floor. And if you watch that game, you got to give a lot of credit to Golden State, who played really, really good defense yesterday. And you also have to kind of scratch your head a little bit at the shots that Anthony Davis was taking. He was taking shots that are really low percentage, even for somebody who's a good shooter. I mean, like getting the ball, one dribble, pull up jump shots from 15 feet away, just not high percentage shots at all. So it's not a surprise that he had a bad game. I do think he bounces back today against this Portland team whose, frankly, big men are nowhere near the talent of the Golden State big men. I do think that the Portland big men are going to struggle to stop him, and I think we could see him explode for a 50-60 fantasy point kind of game tonight, and that would be something really nice for his price. The last guy is DeMarcus Cousins. Now, Cousins is an absolute monster. This is a guy who can put up 20 and 20 basically every night if he decided that he wanted to play and play hard. It's opening night. They're going up against the LA Clippers. He has a chance to go up against DeAndre Jordan, who, frankly, is just not strong enough to deal with him on the post. So I do think that DeMarcus Cousins is the other big guy that you can look at. If you're looking for cash games, I think that Harden is probably the top option for me, the number one guy that's up there. But I will have shares of DeMarcus Cousins, Anthony Davis, and James Harden in tournaments today, hopefully trying to fit two of them together and maybe even trying to put all three on the same roster if I'm able to find enough value to make it work. So those are the guys at the high end that we're looking at. I'm going to go position by position and just mention a couple other guys who stood out to me, guys that I think you should be looking at. A lot of them are the value guys, the glue guys, as I like to call them, who can help put and hold the roster together for you. Starting at the top at the point guard position, Jarrett Jack is not going to be playing today in the opener for Brooklyn, which leaves Shane Larkin at minimum price $3,000 as the starting point guard for the Nets and a guy who's going to see a lot of time. Now, I don't expect Larkin to go off for 40 points here today, but if you can get 20 to 25 out of a guy who's $3,000, which I don't think is crazy considering that Larkin is probably going to play 30 to 35 minutes with, just a lack of depth that they have at the point guard spot, I think this could be a good spot to roll him out there as a cheap salary saver in order to fit in some of those studs. Guy who I really like and is probably one of my top options as a cheap, glue guy today is CJ McCollum from Portland. He's had a really good preseason. He's listed as a point guard on DraftKings at $4,800. He's definitely somebody who fits very nicely into that G spot down at the bottom. You can use him in the point guard spot as well. I definitely think you should have him in your lineup, though. He's a guy that a lot of projection systems are expecting to get 30, 35 fantasy points tonight. And if you can get 30 to 35 fantasy points out of a guy that you're paying less than $5,000 for, that's going to put you on championship winning pace. Moving on down at the small forward spot, there's two guys that I'm looking at that I feel are really reasonably priced and can fit into a lot of rosters. One is Danilo Gallinari. With Wilson Chandler hurting out, you think Gallinari's minutes are going to be as safe as they can be. He'll probably see 30-plus minutes in this game here. And last year when we saw 30 minutes out of Gallinari, he had some games where he put up 30 and 40 fantasy points. At a price of $5,800, I definitely think you're getting good value by rolling him in your lineup, especially considering that he doesn't have a lot of competition for minutes with, Wilson Chandler being on the shelf. Another guy I'm going to mention is Marcus Morris. Morris played 37 minutes last night for Detroit. Finished with 18 points and 10 rebounds, so he had a pretty solid game in the opener, and his price is still only $4,500. So you basically are looking for about 20 to 22 points out of him. Last night he put up a number in the mid-30s. So in the mid-30s for a guy that's less than $5,000, you're getting 7-8 times value out of that, and you really can look away from him if that's the kind of return that you're going to get on your investment. Moving on down to the power forward spot, I definitely think David Lee is in a good spot. He's only $5,400 against Philadelphia, and he's going to be the starting power forward for Boston. Now, this guy was an all-star a couple years ago. Basically because of everybody emerging in that Golden State offense, he was kind of lost in the shuffle. But looking at him in the preseason and watching him, he can still rebound pretty well. He can still put the ball in the basket. He's very crafty. He can use both hands around the rim. He does have a lot of upside, a lot of talent. The problem that he had last year is he wasn't getting the minutes. So now that he's in Boston and we expect him to get the minutes, at $5,400, I think that's a really, really good price for him, especially against Philadelphia, who, basically hasn't been known as a great defensive team over the last couple of years. And moving on down, if you're looking for some value at the center position, I do think Hassan Whiteside has a lot of upside for a guy that's $6,500. It's not the greatest matchup that he has here today. They're playing a team that had been a little bit more of a slow down pace kind of team, and he does have a matchup with Al Jefferson, so he could get himself in foul trouble. We know how much he likes to block shots, but knowing how much he likes to block shots and how much of a monster he is rebounding and on the glass, especially on a team with the power forward of Chris Bosh, who really is somewhat disinterested in getting in there, mixing it up, and grabbing some rebounds. I think Whiteside could still put up a nice double-double today with a couple blocks and end up with a really nice return for only $6,500. So those are some of the glue guys that we like to go along with some of the studs. Again, make sure you, if you're going to play tonight, make sure you stay around that lineup block. This way you can see if there's any craziness that happens. Guys get called out. Like yesterday, Drew Holiday was held out, even though it didn't work out for a lot of the people who took Nate Robinson. I understood the reasoning behind it. I actually had him in a couple lineups myself. Ish Smith went ahead and had the big game, but still, that's the kind of stuff that you need in daily fantasy NBA. You need to make sure you're around. You see which guys are out. You see what kind of value that opens up, and you see what using that value can get you. Because yesterday, if you use that value, you were able to go up and get a guy like a Steph Curry or an Anthony Davis. Obviously, the Davis play didn't work out, but if you went Steph Curry, it definitely did work out. So that's the reason you need to be around that lock. So thank you guys for joining us. This has been our Wednesday edition of the DraftKings NBA DFS Picks. And as always, stay classy, DFS.